Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to the August 6th edition of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight, and my co-host, Dr. Rhonda Lawson, will be joining us later in the show. And last week I wasn't able to be on for the entire show, and it was our 4th anniversary show, and I hated that I couldn't be on, but as I had mentioned last week, I was in the choir that sang at the funeral service for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and we practiced on Tuesday night, and the service was on Thursday. It was a very nice send-off for her, and I was glad to be part of it. And Stevie Wonder showed up like as a surprise and sang 2 songs, so that was a surprise and really nice to experience. So we have a great lineup tonight. Actually, our lineup for tonight is the lineup that we had scheduled for July 9th, the week that all the power was out in Houston and we weren't able to have the show. So we booked all of the same guests for tonight, and we're excited about them being on the show. So we're going to bring on our first guest, and she is no stranger to Black Authors Matter TV. She's been on for the last couple of books that she released, and then she has a new book out called, and I already have my copy. It's called What You Leave Behind. I haven't read it yet, but it is on my to be read shelf. So Wanda Morris, welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV. Oh, go ahead and unmute so we can hear you.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And you've been doing a lot of writing because you had books back to back that you released, and Rhonda is joining the show now. And so,
hey, Rhonda, how are you?
Good to see you too. But
wonderful.
Our book club read both of your books, your other book, All Her Little Secrets and Anywhere You Run, Anywhere You Run, and they got high ratings. In fact, I forgot which one we read first, but after we read the first one, they wanted to read your other one because it was so good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
think
club members.
I think that we read the Anywhere You Run first.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that the first one that came out? Did Anywhere You Run come out first?
No, All Her Little Secrets came out first.
Okay, so I became aware. Okay,
yeah,
I became aware of Anywhere You Run first.
Oh.
And then we looked at the synopsis and we said, oh, she has another book, so let's read that one too. So I can't wait to dig into this one. Now, I've noticed you have Georgia is a big part of your stories. And I see that you live in Atlanta.
I do.
So, are you a native to Georgia?
You know what? I feel like I am. I've been here for over 30 years now. I moved down here right after I got out of school. And I met my husband 1 week after I moved down here, and he's a native of Georgia. So,
yeah. You met him the 1 week after moving there. Well, so that was I guess meant to be one of those.
Yeah, I guess so. It's been 30 years now, so.
So yeah, I noticed Georgia runs through your book, and the first one I read was historical.
Okay, so that was Anywhere You Run,
right? And the second one was contemporary.
Yes.
And now, is this one a mixture? Is this one?
You know what? It has references to history, and it actually opens up with a prologue of a story that has been passed down from slavery and what happened at a place in Low Country, Georgia called Dunbar Creek. And after the after slavery, not slavery itself, was done away with, but there was a law passed, I believe it was 1807 or something around there, that said ships couldn't bring Africans to this country for the purposes of enslavement. And so the slave ships were supposed to stop. Obviously, they did not. And so clandestine slave owners would still bring ships in, and they would slink them in through little back rivers and so forth. And what happened at Dunbar Creek is that a group of slaves took over this small schooner and kind of threw the ship's, captain and so forth overboard. But when they got to land, then the slave owners were there and put them in chains. And a group of these slaves refused to go and live in bondage. And so they just walked back out into the water and drowned.
Wow.
And so
I
the
heard about that.
I think I've
yeah,
heard that story as well.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, did this only happen there, or did it happen in more than one place that you know of?
You know what? It probably happened somewhere else, but there's a landmark, and it's a pretty famous place here it sits in Georgia on St. Simon's Island, which is down near Brunswick.
Okay. And you mentioned low country. Normally, when I hear the term low country, it's referring to South Carolina, but the states are
You know what?
adjacent to each other. But
Yeah,
so,
actually, low country is considered, the low country quarter is considered from northern Florida up through the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina.
Yeah, I've
Um,
heard of
okay.
Savannah considered part of the Low Country as
mhm.
well,
Yep,
because it's
Okay.
closer to the coastal area.
right,
Hmm.
right. So North Florida up through Georgia and the Carolinas is considered low country.
Right. It's kind of like we hear during the Middle Passage that people jumped overboard rather than be
Mhm.
enslaved.
Yeah,
So them walking into the water it's kind of similar act in terms of just
yeah.
refusing to live that way.
Right. And so the story that kind of launches the story. So that's the historical reference, but it's to give the reader some context for why this particular story is so important, because it deals with heirs property, which is a legal concept that says if you die without a will, or some sort of legal disposition of your property, then everyone that you're related to can inherit a fractional share of your property. And all it would take is one person that's related to you that inherits this fractional share to sell theirs, and then they can force a partition sale. So property that's been in your family for decades, for generations, can be sold right out from under you. Even if you live there and the person doesn't, you pay the taxes. And so a lot of unscrupulous real estate developers will use this to their advantage, and they'll dangle a few $1,000s in front of a relative who's strapped.
Right.
And
Mhm.
pretty
Yeah.
soon they force a partition sale, and that's how they get land. There is a documentary that's on Prime Video now called Dollar Tree Road, and it tells the story of these two brothers who were locked up in prison for nearly 9 years because they refused to turn over their land that a real estate developer had gotten in this shady kind of manner.
I was just writing
Mm.
down the
It's
documentary so
very,
I could look it up.
it's
Yeah,
very
you said it's on Prime?
Yeah, it's on Prime Video now. Yeah, it's
Okay,
very
I'll
good.
have to look for that as well. There's been a lot of really good movies on Prime lately.
Yeah, there hasn't there? They've really
Yeah.
upped their game. Yeah.
Yeah, the different streaming services they're doing a lot of the same things, but then every now and then they'll do something different. And
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
No, they're doing some the thing that they're doing the same is they're not showing a lot of the same movies, but they'll show that one popular thing that everybody wants to see, and you can only get on that one streaming service. So
Mm.
you wind up having a whole bunch of streaming services because you wanted to watch that one thing. That's how we ended up with Disney Channel because we wanted to watch Hamilton.
well, you can always cancel. I'm the
Oh no,
queen
well
of the
no, we
free trial.
kept it because we
You kept it.
watched other things on it, but that was what
Okay.
attracted us to Disney.
To Disney. Okay. Well, I don't have Prime. I wait for my annual 30-day free trial. And so I have a list. So when I do the free trial, I watch the things on the list. And
No, we
then
are we are a movie watching family. We have all the well, not all of them, but we have a lot of streaming services.
yeah. Well, I have
We're
more than my
yeah.
share. I just don't want to do Prime. It's like my protest on Amazon where I don't want to be captured.
Yeah.
I don't want to be totally captured by Amazon. So so it's that's why I don't have. But no, I have Hulu and Netflix and Max, which is HBO, and also has MGM. And then I have cable. All this stuff is it adds up.
It
Um,
does, but I'm not getting rid of cable. I know everybody's cutting the cord, but I'm keeping my
People
cable.
say that, but it's all well. See, it's like what you said. There's the one thing, that you want to see. That if you don't have cable, sports is it for me. You can watch sports other places, but I'm a big football fan, and so I even had NFL tickets um, for one season, but it's so expensive, so I
It
I
got too
stopped.
expensive. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want
it
it.
got too expensive, but that's how much I like football. So, but anyway, we're digressing. So
Yeah, back to the book. So
and
what you need to hide
it
about?
happens sometimes. So how has the response been to the new book? But I also want to know, because I haven't looked at your review count for the other titles, the ones that you've had in the past. But did you get a 3-book deal when you started, or did you have a 2-book deal and then they did some more? How did your initial uh arrangement occur? Since these are your first 3 books, correct? Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So
And
I'm just
so
wondering, did they do one two? They normally do two when they sign you.
So all her little secrets went to auction, meaning that several publishing houses wanted to purchase it. I went
Okay.
with HarperCollins and they made me a 2-book deal.
Okay. Okay. And then did they do another one for the new book or
They did a 1-book deal for this 3rd book.
okay. Okay. Because a lot of our viewers are authors, and we'd like to provide them with information on how the publishing industry works. So if they did you have an agent when your book went to auction?
I did. Now, I know some people who publish very successfully, self-publish,
Mhm.
publish without
Yeah,
an agent. I know that I didn't have the wherewithal to do my own marketing and publicity and all that goes into publishing a book, because it's not just writing a book, then you got
no,
to get
definitely
out and
not.
sell it, right? And at the time that I wrote my first book, I was still practicing as an attorney. Um,
Right.
so
Okay.
my time was limited. So I knew that I wanted an agent. And big 5 publishers won't look at you unless you have an
You
agent.
haven't
There that will take unagented writers. Um,
occasionally, but
but
it's
for the
rare.
most part, yeah. But for the most part, yeah. So I had an agent at the time that I
Well,
got.
Okay.
I'm really glad that you point that out because I often, as a book coach, I often get people who ask me whether they should go traditional or whether they should go self-published, and
Mhm.
then whether they should get an agent. And then some people say they want to do everything themselves because they don't want to pay all those. It's just like you said, if you don't have the wherewithal, or maybe you don't even have the time, you might have the wherewithal, you might know how to do it all, but you may not have the time to do it. And so it's
Right.
good to get help. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah, yeah, because it takes a lot. And you want, here's the thing too. I've read some self-published books that I really, really love and I chat up, but here's the thing about it. When you self-publish, make sure that you do it in a professional manner, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that means make sure that your cover looks good, make sure that you get a proofreader so that your book doesn't have typos, make sure that you are getting the word out about your book. So that means you have to have publicity. You need to talk to, bookstores and, bookstagrammers. That means you need to do your own marketing. So there's a
Mhm.
lot that goes into it. And not only can you do it, you want to make sure you do it well so that your book looks very professional.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, getting the help that you need to make sure that you are presenting yourself in
Mhm.
the best light possible is huge. Yes, you can do it all yourself if you want to be up all night. If you if you want your product to look thrown together, do it all yourself and save that money. Go ahead and do it. Do you, boo. But if you are trying to compete with the traditionally published authors, if
Right.
you are trying to get into certain spaces, you're going to have to get the help that you need to do it and do it correctly.
Right, right. Agree wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Now your first book, All Her Little Secrets, it was about a lawyer. So
Yeah.
for that, when you were able to weave your profession into the storyline in terms of just the knowledge of what happens in with law offices and that kind
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
so. Mhm.
Yeah, that book I I tell people I didn't really stretch myself that far in creating that character because a lot of this stuff, well, I won't say a lot of stuff. There are some things that occurred in that book that I actually lived through. And so, going into an upscale boutique with my girlfriend and getting racially profiled, check, that happened to me. Getting dressed down in a meeting in front of other colleagues and somebody's wagging their finger in my face, check, that happened to me. And so in a way that book was kind of cathartic for me. Like I was kind of getting all that frustration out. Now, I have never killed anybody, so
Well, that's
that's
good to
the
know. Thank
fiction
you for
part.
girl. Thank you for letting us know.
That's seriously, people will say, well, what part? No, no, that is the fiction part. That's the fiction part of the book.
Well, you didn't tell us that it was never a time when you thought about it. Some people can take you there in the professional world, and
Ooh,
sometimes
child.
it can be business world can be more ruthless than just your normal situation a
Yep.
lot of times because it's money involved, and reputations and egos and all of that.
I agree.
Mhm.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what took you from, and we may have asked you this when you came on because you've been on the show for all three books. So what took you from the law firm, the lawyer, the corporate lawyer to anywhere you run? What like
You know
made
what? It's
like
so funny. I had just finished writing All Her Little Secrets. And it actually takes about a year from the time you turn the book in to the publisher to the time it's actually printed and sitting on shelves. And so I had just turned that book in, the first book in to the publisher, and my editor said, well, what are you going to write next? You got to write, All Her Little Secrets Part Two. I want to know what happens with the lease. And
okay.
so at first I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. But we had just come through the 2020 election. And you already know it was all that noise about, voting, and the big lie. And, I just started thinking to myself, how is it that 60 years ago we had these same issues around, voting suppression and voting rights, around gay and lesbian rights, around a woman's right to choose, you know,
Mhm.
sex discrimination, racism. It's like it seemed very, very much like 2020 in, 1964. And I thought, maybe I'll write something around voting rights. And I couldn't figure out a contemporary way to do it. So I decided to just kind of point up the parallels between what happened in 1964 and how we're still fighting those same fights in,
Right.
2022 when that book came out. And so, I'd never written anything historical. So people tell me that was a little gutsy, but I did a lot of research.
It's pretty aggressive to do historical because it takes a lot of research. Was
Right.
that a challenge for you?
It was actually a challenge, but not for the reason you think. Like, it wasn't a challenge because it was so much work to do. It was a challenge because going back and reading those stories of what Black and brown folks went through to get the right to vote, to be able to sit at a lunch counter and eat a sandwich, just reading those stories. And if you recall, that book opens up with what happened with three young men who were civil rights activists,
Yes.
helping Blacks to get the right to vote. And so doing research and seeing the pictures, and I actually went back and read the FBI files on the investigation into the death of Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman.
Okay.
Reading that stuff was challenging
Mhm.
because you cannot believe how inhumane people can be and treat one another. And that
Right.
was always a challenge for me. So some days I would research and then I would have to put it away because
You had to
it was too
Too
much.
decompress.
much.
Yeah.
It was too
Mhm.
much.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like watching some of the historical movies. Um, Mississippi Burning is
Mm-hmm.
centered around that murder, and I think I've seen it once. I don't think I've seen it twice all the way through. Like
Well,
it's just so heavy,
It is
but
heavy.
but it's real. But the meanness
I think
of
that would
the
be the
people.
challenge for me because, yes, it would be heavy, but at the same time, I'd be reading it like, okay, I need to depict this in my story. I need to depict that. For me, I would have to edit back so much because I would want to crush so much into that story.
Well, that's the thing about it too with research. When you're researching for a book, there's so much stuff that you
Yeah.
could put into the book, but you're limited by page.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, and so, there were stories because I actually wanted to explore just kind of the women in the civil rights movement. But again, I was limited to page count, and then I write thrillers. And so the book has to be kind of punchy and move fast. But yeah, I have so much research. I think I might actually go back one day and write another historical
There
because
you go. You have enough information already.
exactly, exactly.
Now, in any way you run, what made you have the young lady? Because this is in the beginning, so it's not going to be a spoiler. What made you have her in a romantic relationship with the white guy? Like
It's so
what?
funny because after that book came out, somebody said, you know what, you got a theme running. Like, why do you have black women with white men? Because that was the case in the first book. I did that in Anywhere You Run because I wanted to highlight the complexities of what it was like to be a Black woman. Because and I don't think this is a spoiler, but if you remember the young man she was dating, the question there was, did he really love her or was he just kind of fantasizing, right? Because remember, he butt heads with his father, and his father
Mhm,
was a big segregationist.
mhm.
And so this man may or may not have just been using her, as a pawn in whatever kind of dynamic he had with his father. And so I wanted to point out that not only that, but this woman was desperate to get out of town. And so
Yes,
she
she was.
used
Mhm.
whatever means that she needed to. And if that meant pretending that she liked a white guy, she was going to do it.
Now
Um,
he seemed the way you wrote it, he seemed to be, you know, in love with her, or at least uh, strong light. He seemed to be, and he seemed to be clearly put off when it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. I'll say it like that. That way I'm not spoiling the plot. They're both books are very good, and I'm sure this one is going to be too. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. But I just thought that was an interesting way because you there's not a lot of interracial romances back in the 60s
No,
that we,
they were not.
not an actual romance. Now, black women being raped were
And keep
raped.
in mind too, they had to be undercover. Like,
Yes, they
remember
did. They
when the
couldn't be out in the
police,
open.
right, when the police stopped them, she had to pretend like she was his maid.
Right.
Right.
Like, how
And
does
that's
that?
realistic for that
And that's
time. You
realistic.
would have
Exactly.
had to do that or ride in the back seat
Right.
or, there would have to be social separation.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
kind of deep.
Yeah, but you did a good job of it
Thank
was
you.
an edge of your seat type plot
Thank you.
where
But there's a little romance in what you leave behind too.
okay,
Like a second chance love story. I love second chance love stories. So
okay.
it's yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but Dina Wood gets herself in a big old mess. She's grieving. She's just gotten through a messy divorce and she's just been fired from her job at a law firm in Atlanta. And so she decides to go back home to Low Country, Georgia and kind of, get her footing together, get into a better headspace. And she encounters an older gentleman who's living on a trailer on some very expensive property. And she goes, and he shoos her off with a gun, tells her never to return. She can't get him out of her head. She goes back the following week. The old man is gone, the trailer is gone, and there's a for sale sign on his property after he said he would never sell it. So she goes snooping around and she gets caught up in a really deadly quagmire. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Hmm.
it sounds like a good, I might have to move this one up
I'm
in
about to say,
my
sounds like a
best
page
list.
turner.
I
I
have
like it.
my shelf is so full, but it sounds like a really intriguing plot. And I so enjoyed your other two books.
Thank you.
I thought they were really good. Now, are you going to continue to write these thrillers that have this either legal aspects to them or historical or sometimes both? Are you still
I am working on my fourth book right now.
okay?
And I think I have found the thing. I don't think I know. I have found the thing that I really love and enjoy doing. And I don't see myself stopping. I just,
Okay. Well,
I
you
told my
you
agent, I said, somebody's gonna have to
okay.
come and pry the pen out of my cold dead hands because I just want to keep writing. I just want to keep writing.
Well, you found a sort of a sweet spot where your books are not exactly like anybody else's.
Oh, thank you. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah, you
that
have.
is such high praise.
I'm an avid reader, so your books are not like anybody else's.
Thank
And
you.
that's a testament to
Well,
good
fingers
imagination
crossed
and writing
for
skills.
thank you.
Okay.
Fingers crossed for my next one because my next one deals with a middle-aged woman. She's like 50, she's going through menopause, she's going through it, y'all. But I always put my protagonist through it, don't I?
Yeah, that is true. Well, What You Leave Behind by Wanda Morris is available wherever books are sold. I know that already. And you can't go wrong reading any of Wanda's books.
You. Thank
So
you.
yeah, if you want something that you can kind of immerse yourself in and really get taken away with the story, then your books are it. So thank you so much for being back on the show. We really
Thank
appreciate
you
you
so
coming
much for having me. It's always such a treat to talk with y'all.
on.
Well,
Thank
it was
Okay.
you.
great talking with you. And
You
best
too.
wishes on all you're doing right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate you.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Good night.
night.
Okay. Our next guest is in the queue. Before we bring her on, we didn't really get to say anything about our trip to New Orleans, but Black Authors Matter TV went on the road for the first time, and it was great. And we got a chance to let people know about our show. We were at the National Black Librarians Conference, and Rhonda introduced me to some authentic New Orleans cuisine. I ate at three
She had
different places.
charbroiled oysters, y'all.
I did, and they were delicious at was it Dre Gold's or Dreo's?
Dragos, yes.
Drago's, and then it was Neo's. That's what Neo's. I went there, and then you were gone. So the third day, I went to Oceana Grill.
Okay.
People at the hotel referred me to that
one. Oceana Grill was on one of Gordon Ramsay's shows.
Oh, okay. Well, the food was good.
Good.
So I enjoyed it. And I ended up on Bourbon Street and didn't even know I was going there. So anyway, very congested. There's tons of people walking, just tons of people. So anyway, we're going to bring on our next guest. She's a young adult fiction author. Her name is Kim Johnson, and her book is called The Color of a Lie. And it's young adult fiction, and I'll let her tell us about it. I haven't read it yet, but it sounds like a very intriguing plot. And I read about it, and that's what caused me to extend the invitation because it sounded like a really, really good story. So, Kim, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
So, do you have a copy of your book of it handy?
I do, right here.
Okay, The Color of a Lie. Okay, I like the cover.
Thank you.
And it's got young people on it, so hopefully young readers will be drawn to it.
Yeah, I hope so. A lot of my work, I do have crossover with young adults and adult, but young people do tend to be drawn to my stuff because I make it fast paced. So,
Okay, and they came out in June, so it's been out for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your writing background, which book is this in your list
Yeah.
of books published, and how did you get started with your career? And then we'll learn more about the story.
Yeah, this is my third book published. I published my first book in 2020. I've been really fortunate to have an incredible editor at Random House, and all my books have came out of Random House. And I started writing later in life. I never really thought of myself as a writer. When I was growing up, even having a college degree, a graduate degree, I had that imposter syndrome with writing. I just felt like I wasn't a creator. I wasn't creative. I was other things. I was a leader. I was a problem solver, but don't make me put it down on paper. And, but I was always a storyteller. And I had people around me who were always telling stories and just telling them either in my head or, oral storytelling, watching shows, reading books, breaking things down. And I was 32 at the time, and I woke up from a dream, and I've always had very vivid dreams. And I just got up and said, I'm going to go to the bookstore and start writing. And I just fell in love with writing. And several years later, 5 or 6 years later, I finally found my agent. And then a year after that, Random House bought my first novel, This Is My America, and I've been writing ever since.
Wow. What do you think it was that solidified your love for writing? What was it about writing?
I think especially as you get older and a lot of your habits and interests, you start to get very focused on the real world and real life problems and the things that you have to do, and you lose pieces of yourself. You lose that oftentimes, that creative sense, if you're not in a field that's creative. And I felt like I needed something that was for me. I felt like I had young kid at the time, and I was busy with work, and it became sort of this like sacred space for
Yes.
me to be able to create and birth my own story. And, initially when I started writing, I didn't actually have publishing on my sites. It was just about, wow, I've got this space where I can tell a story and I can, use my imagination in a way. And then that kind of like took off when I realized, like, wow, I'm actually good at this. I actually can do this. So
Now, you also mentioned something very powerful. You said that you felt that you had imposter syndrome. How did were you able to work past that, or have you even worked past it?
I worked past most of it, but it's still there. I think every time I start working on a new book, I think that's actually a very common thing for writers. You're like, oh my goodness, how do I do this again? Like, I gotta
Yes.
start from scratch. But it definitely was something that I think holds us back, especially a Black community. There's so many ways that we always have to prove ourselves, and because we
Yes.
often have to prove ourselves, we think that we have to be the best at it, where I think other communities, they actually don't have to fight through that. They don't have to be the best at it. And so I think a lot of it stems from feeling like if I wasn't excellent at it, then maybe it shouldn't be something that I should try. And I think it's like once I learned that I was getting better and better, and I was learning how to tell a story, and I was getting a lot of feedback, that confidence really started to build, and has erased a lot of it. So.
Nice.
Yeah, other people, I'll say mostly the majority population, they get the benefit of the doubt most of the time, like 99% of the time. And they don't have to prove that they're worthy is just the word that comes to my mind right now. They don't have to prove that, and it's assumed that they are until they show that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
have to prove ourselves first, and we don't get that benefit of the doubt.
But the
Yeah.
sad part is that as we're talking about this, some would assume that we're talking about we have to prove ourselves to other people, to white people or non-black
Other
people. But
cultures.
often we have to prove ourselves to our own people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, if you think back to that old episode of Sanford and Son, when Lamont took Fred to the doctor, and Fred said that he only wanted a white doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wound up getting a black doctor, and he automatically started thinking about, oh, did you just take a correspondence course, or are you experienced, are you really good at this, and asked them all these questions instead of saying, oh, I have a black doctor, I'm excited. He just automatically thought that he couldn't do it. And I think often we ourselves, our culture start to think that of ourselves, where we think that our own people can't do it, or that we're not as good, and we wind up, when we become authors, or when we become professionals or so forth, instead of them saying, oh, my cousin, my sister, or my friend is great at something, we automatically think that they're not as great, and we have to, and then they wind up having to prove themselves to show that they are great at what they do.
Yeah, I really do see that a lot. I think that we're just, as a society, dominant culture has really indoctrinated us because we can't run away from it. It's all around
Hmm.
us. I mean, you could even look at this, election that's going on where,
Yes.
Kamala Harris has a huge record of accomplishments, of just being at the top in what she's doing. But the sort of immediate response from some community members, not internally within our own community, but externally, is being told that, oh, she's not bright, she's a DEI hire, she's this and she's that. And I think we pick that up because we see that so much, and have to like fight against a lot of those um, places, which is unfortunate.
I agree.
Yeah. Sometimes um, when people question our credentials, I guess, I never used the term imposter syndrome because it wasn't, I haven't worked for anybody in a long time. So there's no imposters in my office because I decide who comes in. But so me hearing some of the terms that are used in, corporate settings or, large, even government entities, um, there's, they're somewhat new, but not really. When people say it, then I get to go back in my head to years ago when I worked for somebody, but I haven't experienced it directly in many years because I haven't worked for anybody else in a long time. So that's one benefit of that. Even though, there are challenges, I tell people there are challenges to being self-employed, but I don't have to deal with racism at work. That's one thing I haven't had to deal with in decades because I haven't had a boss. And I've employed people of all persuasions, but they worked for me. So they had to do whatever I told them, or they were out the door. So, but yeah, you don't have the nurturing network around you. And a lot of times, as the higher you go up, the more isolated you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't get the same encouragement or again, benefit of the doubt that other people get. So the color of a lie, does that include anything about the imposter syndrome, or does that have other underlying plot lines?
Yeah, I think that it actually is a great way to think about it because in this story, Calvin it sort of toggles between the Black community and the white community. And so that sense of who you are and what you're capable of, is a theme in a lot of my work. Maybe not necessarily imposter syndrome, but just like figuring out who you are and who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So with this story, it's my first historical thriller. My other works I call are social justice thrillers. They deal across places of race and identity and justice and systems, and telling the stories that I do. And so for this particular story, my main character is different in a lot of ways when we see stories about passing, is that many stories about passing that have been inspirations for my work, like Nella Larson's Passing or, The Vanishing Half, are, folks who have made that decision that they actually want to pass. In my story, it's his father who makes a decision because he was a World War II vet, came back from the war, fighting fascism and realizing that, oh, wow, I thought I would come back and have these rights given to me, and they're not, which was experience of many Black soldiers from World War II. And so he's like, I'm going to get my piece of the American pie. And so his father moves their community to Levittown, which is an actual real community. Three very well-known Levittown, Pennsylvania, Long Island, and New York, that were all white exclusive communities in the 1940s and 50s. And they decide to move as white. And so for Calvin in this story, he has to strip away actually who he is and create a new identity because he needs to fit in. And his father is very fearful that if he does the things that he loves, like playing jazz music and other things, he'll get found out.
So is the son, is he able to pass too?
His son, actually, in the story, the way that I've written it is that his son is able to pass, his wife is able to pass, so the family is able to pass, but he does have an older brother that it's a little bit more difficult to pass. And he's a bit estranged already because of, don't want to see the spoilers, because of something that happened previously, and some challenges that his father has with his older son, that he lives on the other side. He has actually moved to this town, but it's about 11 miles away. So there's a Black side of town, it's 11 miles away, and the white side of town from there. And so he balances going across sides of communities.
It's interesting, the location where your story takes place, because we often hear of this happening in cities like New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans. And even today, there is a bit of a color line in the city. There are certain areas where you're going to see more lighter skinned people because in the 20s, 30s, 40s, that's where the lighter skinned people lived. And so you'll see a higher concentration of them there. Then we talk about the brown paper bag test. We saw a lot of that happening in New Orleans. So it's interesting that your story doesn't take place in New Orleans, which shows people that this just wasn't a New Orleans problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really, a lot of times when we talk about race and justice and those kinds of stories, they're often told in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And we almost forgive the Midwest and the North as if these issues didn't occur in there. And so
Yes.
when I placed it in Pennsylvania, I really wanted it to be thinking about the greater issue of white flight when Black folks actually were moving from the South to the North and Midwest for opportunity, only for white folks to sort of like freak out over it and then try to create their own enclaves, and having benefits of better real estate rates, actual access to different kind of real estate. And so again, being more secluded into their own communities.
It made me, what you talked about made me think of two things. And I want to make sure I bring them both up. So hold on one second. Normally passing, and I was just sitting thinking about it, it's always a female who's the object of a story about passing. In movies, I won't say always, but primarily it's a female who's passing. You don't really hear about the males passing unless it's a family passing. There's an old movie, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a doctor. It's a black and white film, and it's one of those during like the Imitation of Lifetime, but it wasn't that one. And it was a doctor and his wife, and the whole family was passing, and they ended up getting found out. So I think I can't think of the name. Jose Ferrer was an actor. Anyway, I need to look it up because I saw it once and it's been
Yeah,
years
when you
ago.
see it, please send it to me
Yeah,
because
Yeah,
let
I
us
haven't I
know.
haven't seen it. Yeah, yeah.
I need to write it
I was like,
down.
oh, that could be a good comp.
It really actually was a kind of, ahead of his time in terms of just the topic, the way they dealt with the topic. And because it wasn't like Imitation of Life, like tragedy,
Yeah,
like, that. It was the
yeah.
whole family passing, and he was a doctor. I forgot what the wife was, if she was a professional or a stay-at-home mom. But it was interesting. The other thing is, I don't know if you all heard recently, and it's been in the last year or so, there was a news story about a Black couple that was selling their home.
Mm-hmm.
And they put, I think the real estate agent encouraged them to do this, but they put white photos in the house to make people who came to look at the house think the house was owned by a white couple. And there was a dramatic difference in the offering price.
Yeah, I did see that story, and they've done so when folks are getting their house appraised and seeing
Yes,
the difference.
that,
Yeah,
that
I
was
think it
what it
was
was, the
appraisal.
appraisal.
Yeah, an
That's what it was.
appraisal.
Mhm.
Yeah, and a lot of my work, I've written stuff that's about present time, but I always talk about the past is very much present. And for
Mhm.
this story, I really wanted to touch upon the community access piece of it because real estate is really, it's been the American way of how people build generational wealth because
Yes.
you're able to own your home. You can use it against so much. You can help pay for college and school and other kinds of things. You can pass it down, and the lack of access to generational wealth, equity, the ability for equity, which would have impacted the family that you're talking about, is such a huge piece of so many different ways that the Black community has been affected, in practices that have been either illegal practices or practices that the law has sort of deemed okay to be done.
Right. Because with that appraisal, it's not illegal technically, but if it's done in practice, it may as well be you know, if that's the way everybody does it, you almost need to create a law. But then it's almost like whenever there's a law, people figure out how to get around it. And it's
Yeah.
not just with this, it's just, I mean, if you take, I'll give an example of Congress, whenever they do a new bill to supposedly limit the amount of money in politics, like campaign finance reform, whenever they do it, they always leave some loopholes so they can still get money. So it's like chasing, going down a rabbit hole, you know. So, but there's still racism that exists, but it's not the aggressive kind where, people aren't, for the most part, physically threatened, although that still happens. But it's more these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Is
It's
more
coded.
unspoken,
Yeah, it's coded. I think we see it a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, the election, I'm sorry, it's just so heavy in my mind, but even saying Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, right? It's coded. That's specifically coded language. And we see I mean, we just see it in so many different ways. It's sort of it is the unspoken piece of things.
So the color of the lie, I saw a girl, I thought I saw a girl's face. It's a girl born a girl.
Yeah.
How do teens respond to your books? Are all your books targeting young adults, young
They
adult kids?
are.
And how do they respond?
I have been really pleasantly surprised at how my work has been received. And I always felt my work would be received by Black kids because that's really like my primary audience. I want to write the books that I really didn't get to see when I was growing up. And so much of the reasons why I just love writing young adult is because it's almost like healing my own inner child of all the things that I didn't get to see and experience. Um, and I've just been so surprised broadly how well received my work has been. And The Color of the Light, it's still fairly new. It just came out, but my first two works, it's being taught in curriculum around the country. It's been picked as a school state read. It's My second novel is Oregon book selection. So all the high school kids who want to compete for the book reading for the summer and the school year competition, they'll have to read my book. I think the thing that they resonate with is because I make my stories really fast paced and thrillers, that even if it's not coming from their background, it draws them into the story. And then what books do is they help you empathize and help you understand. And I think that's also actually one of the reasons why I love writing thrillers and mysteries, is because when I was growing up, I couldn't see myself in a lot of work, but I could see myself as the person solving the case in the story. And that's how I entered a lot of the things that I read growing up. So yeah, it's been really well received. And I do think like even though my stories deal with really heavy issues, I don't want Black stories to be just about the impact of things happening to them. So all my
Right.
characters have a lot of agency. They have very strong families, even if maybe they don't support them. You can tell that there's a very solid community that circles around them. And all my stories have a love interest element of it, because I just think that we just need more love, even in the
Yeah.
hard
We're
pieces. And
not we're not
I think that
always
combination helps.
angry and walking around trying to give a racial lesson, and
Yeah.
things aren't always happening to us. Sometimes we're just living and we're existing and we're
Mm-hmm.
loving.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
just
what's
like
next for you?
I'm in because my book just released, I'm in the proposal stages. So I've got a couple different projects that I'm working on, but don't have an official thing I can say yet. but more but more young adult. I do want to try, I've written three similarly sort of themed, even though they're different time periods, kinds of stories. I actually want to take a little bit of a break and kind of focus a little bit more on maybe a more commercial thriller. with still dealing with like systemic and institution types of things, but having that maybe be more of the foundation. So
Nice.
Well, I think the fact that you're targeting your work to a young adult audience is really admirable, and
I think it's
it
smart, really. I
yeah,
mean,
it
if you
gives them a chance to look at things with more depth, not just on the
right.
surface.
Right. And it gives you a chance to talk to your core audience. You've defined your audience, and so you can gear your work toward that audience. I mean, often a mistake that many authors make is trying to appeal to the masses. And
yeah.
you don't have to appeal to the masses. When you try to appeal to everyone, you're not appealing to anyone.
Yeah,
Yeah, know
exactly.
your audience. That's the truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have two books geared toward teens, but they're not fiction. So um, I'm always interested in hearing how teens respond to fiction. Because one of them is going to college debt free, which is more for the parents because the
Yeah.
teens really don't get it yet, but they will. But the parents get it. So, and the other was a like a guide for teen girls, like principles to live by to be successful.
Right.
So, I don't know if I could write a fiction book for teens. I don't know if I could do that. I have
You
fiction.
surprised you could surprise yourself. I
I
didn't think I would ever be
could.
a writer at all.
I don't spend a lot of time with teens, especially since
Yeah.
my daughter's
Yeah. You
28
got to be
now.
around them
Yeah.
or into their stuff or
Yeah, she's
a
28
good
now, so
listener.
that's it. So I don't really have the point of view. I don't, you need that. You
Yeah,
need
yeah, yeah. I've spent 20 years working in higher ed around college students. So I've
okay.
that
Okay.
was my other career. So I'm always around young people all the time.
Well,
Okay.
see, so you have that instant inner research going on.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Hearing what they're talking about and what interests them and what motivates them, and social media is a big part of it, but they do social media different than we do, you know. Um, theirs is different. So some of it can be toxic. And so um, I'm hoping that more young people get a sense of self and aren't looking for themselves through however many likes or shares or
hmm
whatever on social media.
Yeah.
That's not, I told my daughter when she was first getting on there when she was 13, I let her have a Facebook. That was when Facebook was really the only one, other than Snapchat, which I heard about, on the back end. But I told her, just remember, those people don't know you.
Yeah.
They are not your friends. And so don't let that, whatever they say, define you or whatever. Those are strangers, and you need to, that people are in your actual world love you. And that's what
hmm
you need to focus on, because those
Yeah.
people don't know you from Adam.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much for being a guest on the show, and show us your book, the cover of your book one more time. So,
Yeah.
'cause
And I'll show my others.
relate.
I don't have my other
Sure,
one
yes,
here.
please do.
Yeah.
Oh, Invisible Sun. I like that
Yeah.
one. I like
Yeah.
the cover. Wow.
Thank you.
Nice. Very nicely illustrated. So thanks so much again, and
Thank you
continued
so much.
success in the niche that you're writing in.
All right. Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Well, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show that we do have a book to give away. So this is the book that we're giving away. It is the art, and I'm not sure what the release date is, but it's the advanced reading copy of Tanana Reed Dew's book, The Wishing Pool and Other Stories. So because it's green and I have a green screen, it's like making it see it's looking different. But anyway, it's called the wishing pool. I'm not going to do the question now. I'm going to do it at the end of the next interview. But at least you all who try to win the books, you know who you are, and so you can be ready to answer the question after when we give it to you at the end of the next interview. So our next guest is someone I've known for many, many, many years. I think I've known him since his first book, but he'll confirm that when he comes on the screen. It's Brandon Massey, and he's a prolific writer. He writes thrillers, mysteries, some supernatural, and fiction, only fiction as far as I know. He's even done some short story anthologies, and he's done all kinds of things. I'm trying to remember, Brandon, have I known you since your first book? I think I have.
Yeah, you have.
I think I
Yeah.
met you with your first book,
Yes, yes,
and
exactly.
that's been close to 20 years ago. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
he has a new book out. I already have my copy, haven't read it yet. It's on my to be read show, along with a bunch of other books. But Bad Influence. And I saw it just came out, but you already have like a bunch of reviews already. So it must,
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah,
so
that's
congratulations
really,
and welcome
thank
back
you.
to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. How are y'all doing?
Doing
Wonderful. It's
great.
great having you here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you.
yeah. So when did the book come out exactly? Because you were supposed to be on the July 9th show, the one that we had to cancel because of the COVID.
Right. Yeah, so the book came out at the end of June, and
Okay.
it's gotten a lot of really good reviews so far, which is always exciting and kind of a relief because even though
It is.
at this point I've done this is novel number 17, but you just never really know how people will respond to what you're doing. So it's always really nice to see when people enjoy a story. And yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm just
Helps
kind of,
validate your work and your time that
yeah,
you put in.
Right.
And,
exactly. Hmm.
Do you think part of it also is because you've kind of stayed true to your genre over the years?
Hmm. Yeah, I think when you give people, kind of what they expect, I look at it this way. I try to give them something that's similar but a little bit different
Right.
than what I've done before, and that seems to be effective because if every book were just something completely different, not everyone likes every type of story. Like I've done a story that had more of a sci-fi angle, and um, the reception of that wasn't as positive. I mean, I enjoyed it, but you kind of just learn over the years what your readers really enjoy most reading. So it's really just the balance of writing a story that I'm comfortable and excited about, says where I can say the things I want to say, but at the same time, people will also want to pick it up. It's a two-way thing. It's not just, oh, I just write what I want and who cares if someone reads it? Well, I care. That's the whole point of it,
Right.
is to connect with the audience. So
I mean, that's why we're
yeah,
writing books, right? We're not writing books just for
exactly.
our own
for
entertainment.
ourselves or for
Exactly,
ourselves.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
I
And
so
mean,
you
you
it's just
might
a
know,
be
balance of,
enjoying writing the book, but you actually want somebody to read
to
it.
read, you
yeah,
do. You
yeah,
want the
exactly.
effort to be worthwhile. And you have to be really like in the top tier to say, I mean, if you don't really care if people like your books or not,
Mhm.
that's that's people who really are in the top tier. I still think they care, even, you know,
I think so.
I think they still care.
Yeah, and
Although
even
I
and
think sometimes
mhm,
sometimes the writing falls off.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
or sometimes I wonder if the people are still writing their books. I wonder if
That's
they have
true.
a ghostwriter or something.
Well,
Sometimes
there
the
is a
voice sounds
yeah,
different, you know?
there is an author who I enjoy reading, and I heard that he has a team who basically writes his books for him now because he is, and at first I was like, no, but then when you think about it, he has so many books that have come out so close to each other. He can't possibly be writing all of these books.
Right.
So
Mhm.
after a while, you do get a team, and then you have to wonder, is that team kind of diluting your writing? Or, I
Mhm.
mean, are you really there to coach them through to make sure that they reflect your voice?
Well,
Exactly.
if you do
Yeah.
all that, you
Mhm.
can write the book yourself. But I don't know. I don't know if a book written by a team really has like a soul,
Yeah. Yeah, I think
you
I could
know?
see that because I know with all of my books, with every single one of them, there is something personal to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's that element is a little, it's not as large, but like with Bad Influence, so it's about this family where it's husband and wife and their teenage daughter. She recently turned 13. Their teenage daughter connects with another girl a year older than her who is basically a toxic person. So she gets pulled into this toxic friendship, and her parents are really struggling with how to handle it because they can't be around their child 24/7. I mean, she goes to school, she's got her own phone. I mean, they can take her phone, but she's still at school. I mean, she's still going to see this kid. And so
Right.
so I have a daughter. We have a daughter who's basically the same age as the character in the story. And although my daughter hasn't been in a full blown toxic friendship, it's kind of one of those fears that's kind of floating at the back of my mind. Like, what would I do if she did? Um,
Right.
whether she was involved with a boy, she's not quite at that point yet. Not yet.
Well, as far as you
I know it's
know.
coming. Not yet, but of either a boy or another girl who is just, she just gets sucked into this friendship. And at that age, kids, their friendships can just be really intense, you know. And so it's really about this family that their daughter gets sucked into this toxic friendship with a girl who's just a sociopath and tends to get away with her sociopathic behavior because she's still a child. People don't necessarily take it seriously until things just truly get out of hand. But so that's what I'm saying. So every story that I write has some type of basis in my own personal experience, even if it's just in a most even in a trivial way. But it's usually something that about the story where I can say, yeah, that's kind of like came of something that I was familiar with. So same case with this one.
Yeah, a
And then
lot of
how do
your books
you,
have a toxic character.
A lot of them do, you said?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
well,
they do.
that makes your books what they are, right?
Yeah, I mean, every character to me, I have a theory about this. I think people enjoy reading about a really good villain.
Yes.
Um, and I've had books where the villain, that antagonist character was just not really as powerful or as present in the story. And those books didn't do as well with readers
Mm.
compared to the ones where the villain was just a really colorful, memorable character. Like Nana. That's probably my
Mm-hmm.
most popular book now. Where
Is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Dark Corner is another one. I know you enjoy that one.
Yeah, that's
Where
on my top 20 list of all time.
Yeah, yeah, and that story also has a really strong antagonist. And I think so. Just saying, all yeah, there's like a toxic character at some level in a lot of these stories, and I just think that is what makes them compelling to see people who are maybe just sort of ordinary people. Well, how do they respond when they bump up against that person who
Mm.
maybe they don't follow the rules that everyone else does? They just kind of do whatever they want. How do you respond to that? How does a normal person respond to that? And that's where I think just the fun of this, at least fun for me with writing it, is showing how do these characters deal with this character who just kind of takes over the world and doesn't follow the rules that they've been trained to follow.
Yeah, you
That's a big one.
in well, two things. Dark Corner, I don't even remember the whole plot exactly because it's been 15 years since I read it.
Mhm.
But the what I remember is it grabbed me like in the wooden, like in such a way that it wouldn't let go. And the only thing I remember is about is has a historical framework and it's
Mhm.
about vampires.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's the only vampire book I've ever read.
Yeah, I
I
hear
mean,
that
I
a
don't
lot.
like vampire books, but
Yeah,
I love Dark Corner was so engrossing. And it wasn't scary, but it had some scary elements to it.
hmm yeah, I
And then
think
your
that,
book, The
yeah,
Landlord, that was the last one, right? Before this new one,
yeah, the
The
landlord.
Landlord. It has 1,000 reviews. That is amazing. That is incredible. I am so excited for you because I know you self-publish your books. And a
Yeah,
thousand reviews, that's a lot of readers. And
yeah,
it was a good book.
yeah. I'm kind of, I think it comes down as far as all the reviews. I think it's what I've been figuring out is that people just. I actually done surveys of my readers where they like to have books available the way that they like to experience the story. So they may want an ebook, the Kindle. They may want a paperback. But the really big thing now is the audiobook.
Yeah,
And
it
I've
is.
found that probably about 30% of my readers only want to read or listen to the audiobook. And
Oh,
they'll tell me, I'll send out an email saying, oh, my new book just came out. It's an ebook and paperback. And they'll just say, you know what? Email me when the audio is available. They're not going to pick it up otherwise. They're just not interested. So with the newest book, Bad Influence, I worked with William Wells. He's a narrator. He's a voiceover artist out of Houston. This is the fifth time he and I have worked together, and I said I want to get this one out quickly. The book just dropped, and I don't want to have folks waiting for 6, 12 months to get the audio. I want to get it out there while it's the book's still relatively new. So I just think that's the type of stuff I think that just helps people just kind of expand your market as much as you possibly can. Just make the book available in every format. Usually if you're with a traditional publisher, they kind of handle that for you. But
right.
if you're independent, you got to do it all yourself. And a lot of the independent authors, they may do the ebook and the paperback, but they don't do the audio, and you're kind of missing out, on that segment of the audience where that's all they want is audio. They want to listen
Right.
to your book when they're commuting or they're cleaning their house, doing the dishes or whatever. So you just got to meet people where they are. I think it's
I've
important.
I've got to say, I was at work. I had to work in the office today, hence the
hmm
blazer,
Oh,
because normally
hmm
I'd be a lot more comfortable. But
hmm
as I'm working and typing and sending emails, I'm listening to an audiobook. It's the thing
Right.
that keeps me
Mhm.
grounded.
Exactly.
And then
hmm
living in the DC area, I'm always driving, so I'm
hmm
always listening to an audiobook. I don't
hmm
feel comfortable just listening to music anymore. I have to be
hmm
listening to an audiobook. And now
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
down to the last hour and 20 minutes of my book. I'm probably going to be listening to that book while I'm working on something else when I'm getting ready to fall asleep.
hmm
That's just
Yeah.
my thing now. So I think you're
Exactly.
right that when ebooks and physical books are fine, but there is a huge segment of the reading audience that are so busy they don't have time to sit down and read anymore. They want to listen to an audiobook.
Yep. Yep. And
well,
I've read
Rhonda's been
it's.
working on me.
Mhm.
She might gonna
Uh-huh.
have convinced me. Finally, I'm hearing it from numerous people,
Yeah.
and I have two novels. I need to get them on. Now, since you do your own, how do you get the audio? Oh, you do it with Audible. You put it on
Yeah,
Audible.
I do it with Audible, and
Okay.
they basically their platform similar to publishing on Kindle, where it's all kind of consolidated in one place. So basically, um, if you go on to Audible, you can basically link your book to all the available narrators who might be interested, and they can audition. They can read like a chapter of your book as their audition, and then you listen to that sample and you decide, I like this person, I want them to record it, or I don't like them. Um, so that's how I found Mr. William Wells, who I've worked with 5 times now, is just through an audition, and I just loved his voice. and said, you know what? He's kind of how I would like to sound if I were reading one of my books. So I want to pick him to work on these books, and he does a great job. Um, and then you just, you know, the thing is, there is some expense involved because if you're hiring this is what he does for a living, so you got to pay him a professional rate.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a couple $1,000s, um, to pay an experienced voiceover artist to record your book. Um, so that's one way to do it. Or I know authors, they record the books themselves where they set up a studio in their somewhere in their house that's quiet. Like you can set up even like a closet, soundproof the walls, get your recording equipment, and record your own audiobooks. So that's one way to do it too. I just think it's important to just make the book available in that format because that's just what so many readers expect and want right now. And you're just missing out on those readers if you don't have that audio available.
Yeah, when my last book, Exodus from Treachery, came out, I met with a book club, and she said she hadn't had a chance to read it because she was looking for the audio and she'd
Yeah,
been so busy.
exactly. See, yeah,
So the
that's what I
other
hear
book
all the
club
time.
people read it, but she didn't get a chance to read it because she needed an audio because she was so
Yeah.
busy,
Mm-hmm.
driving or working or whatever. So now you
Mm-hmm.
said have you ever tried to do your own audio, or did you immediately seek professional help?
I thought about doing it at first, and I bought some of I bought a microphone that could have worked. But then I kind of went through like some tests to see what it would be like, and I said, you know what, it was just hard for me to find the time. It's not easy. It's hard work. If you like my latest book, I think when he recorded it, the final version is a little over 7 hours,
Okay.
but that's like finished hours. Like how many hours did
Yes.
he spend getting to those final seven? Probably three times as many. Because
Yes.
if you stuttering or something, like, oh, I got to go back, I got to fix that. I mispronounced something. Just so it's a long process, and I just said, you know what? My strength is I'm just going to write the book. I'll find somebody who specializes in this other stuff to do those things. So I'm happy to pay him because he deserves it. And, in the long run, I do make the money back. It's just an investment,
Yeah.
in the project, and over the life of the project, it's profitable for me. So it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a few books I think I'm going to have turned into audiobooks.
Mhm.
I think it's really good also to revive a backlist.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point because so Amazon started offering this little feature where they are using uh, artificial intelligence voices. So you could
Mhm.
just, if your book is on Kindle, you could literally click a few buttons and there's an AI narrator. Now, I've done that with probably three or four books, just older books, just to see like how would people respond.
Mhm.
And a lot of people they don't like it because they say the AI narrator just sounds stiff. Um, it's not dramatic. It's not a
You can
dramatic
tell
reading.
that. I mean, there are
Yeah.
some YouTube videos out there where there's an AI voice kind of
Hmm.
narrating it,
Hmm.
and it sounds so matter of fact, and there's
Right.
no
Mm.
feeling in it. And it takes away from the quality of the story that way. I mean, I've had some audiobooks where it was an actual
Hmm.
human reading it, but I didn't
Hmm.
like the way the human was
Yeah.
reading it.
Right.
So I took the book back. I didn't want to listen
Hmm.
to it anymore.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and AI, they have them now for the customer service, which I hate, hate,
Yeah.
hate, hate, because they're not human, and so you have to go through so much to get to a human, and
It's
then
crazy.
sometimes when you finally do get to a human, they can't understand you, and you can't understand them. It's
Yep.
true like that.
Hmm.
They could be anywhere in the world, and
Hmm.
so I know companies are doing it because it's cheaper, it saves them money, but not
Hmm.
sometimes humans are necessary
Absolutely.
to
Yeah,
solve problems. AI is not going to solve your problem for
exactly.
you. They can
Yeah.
only lead you to press 1, 2, or 3.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Now you said something about a science fiction book that you had that, what did you say? People didn't like it or something.
Yeah.
Which
So
one
that
was
was
it? Did you read it?
you did read it. It's Frenzied. Do you remember that one?
Yeah,
So
I liked
yeah,
Frenzy.
it wasn't one of your favorites, though. I remember. I remember
No,
we talked about
it wasn't, but
that.
I've never read any of her books that I didn't like at all. And if I didn't, I wouldn't say that I did. I just wouldn't bring it up. I just wouldn't bring it up. I just wouldn't say anything about it. But some I like more than others. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
my
Yeah.
all-time favorite is Dark Corner because it was just so. It was like 500 pages, and it
Yeah.
was
It was
just.
long.
It was
Hmm.
Okay,
so.
500 pages.
Yeah, if it's a good book, 500 pages is awesome to read. But it has to
Yeah.
be a good book. It can't be boring.
Yeah.
It has to be. And that one just was amazing. But most of your other ones are more like 300. That's
Yeah.
like your sweet spot now. And I think this
Are
one
you
is.
still writing the longer books? I know a lot of authors are moving towards shorter books and novellas, or maybe a little longer than a novella, but shorter than a full-length novel now, because they're figuring um readers just don't want to read longer books anymore. But you stick with the longer books.
Yeah. Mine are about 350
Mm.
pages or so. I think as long as and that's kind of where that's like my sweet spot is like in the and it just not just for writing, but my own personal preference. I usually won't read a really thick book unless I'm absolutely convinced it's going to be good. Um, like I'm reading Tananarive The Reformatory.
Reformatory.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
I'm
know that
reading that too.
I know that's a great book. I'm going to
Yeah.
finish it. It's a longer book. I'm okay. It's fine.
Yeah, I've
But
read it already. And I think, Rhonda, have you finished?
I haven't
yeah.
finished it yet, but
Okay.
I will be finishing it soon. But one thing about Tanana Du's book, The Reformatory, is there
Mhm.
aren't I was reading a book recently that I felt could have ended probably 100 pages earlier because it just felt like there were so many lulls within the story
Mhm.
where, okay, you just introduced something else, but then you never really went back to it.
Mhm.
But with the reformatory, everything just seemed to flow, and
Mhm.
the story didn't feel, there was no place in the story so far that's felt like the story could have ended right there.
Right.
Like she was just drawing it on. So
Mhm.
I think that's what I'm really enjoying about her book. And that's what I like about longer books. If it's
Yep.
going to be long, it shouldn't feel like it should have ended 100 pages ago or 200 pages ago. It's got to
Exactly.
feel like everything makes sense and you don't really want the story to end, or you're wondering how it's going to end because
Right.
you don't foresee that ending coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
also with the reformatory, even though it's 500 pages, it takes place over a short period of time, the
It
storyline.
does. It really
It's
does.
not it's not like years and years past. No, it's
Mhm.
I don't even know if a year passed in the
It seemed like
story.
it was all in a week.
It did. I mean it was
Mhm.
but it
Mhm.
was just so horrific. But I'm not gonna do any spoilers for those who are still reading or plan to read the reformatory. It's like a classic book. It's one of
Yep.
those
Absolutely.
types of
Yeah.
books.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
know I'm trying to think of some of your other books that I really, really like. The Covenant, even though you said that's not one that got a lot of traction.
No,
Uh,
it's not. But I mean, I enjoyed
I,
it. I
I,
had fun with it.
it's about that book. I remember the story because it was one of my favorites of yours. It's
Mhm.
like the
I
top
believe
five.
I
It's
believe
about
Brandon
a
and I shared an anthology years and years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
called Second Chances. I think it was about crimes of passion. No, I'm sorry, Second Chance. It wasn't called Second Chances. That was different. But it was called Crimes of Passion. I believe that was like a long time ago, though. Very long time ago.
And it was another book you had an anthology, but The
Yeah.
Covenant is about like a preacher that leads people astray.
Yeah,
I
the
don't put
part.
it
Yep.
like that.
Y'all
But
gonna
it was
y'all gonna
really
stop
good.
playing with these preachers. Leave the
It was
preachers
really
alone.
good. But no, the story is really good. And I have preachers in both of my novels. Not they don't play a big role, but I do have a character that is
You
colorful.
never
Colorful.
in
They're
Rhonda
colorful.
Lawson's books, you will never see a preacher doing wrong. I'm not messing with the I'm not messing with the man of God like that.
Well, I'm a PK, so I feel like that gives me license because my heart is in the right place. And if I write a character, it's based on an amalgamation of a bunch of different people. Now, it's not about one individual, and it's just a colorful part of the story. The other book I like of yours, Brandon, is Don't Ever Tell. Isn't that the name
Don't
of
ever
it?
tell. Yeah.
That was good. That was a good book. Our book club read it years ago. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, that
12,
came out
13.
2008. That came out
Yeah,
2008.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, those are right. That's another good one. If y'all
Okay.
are looking for good books to read, these are some of Brandon's best. You'll be able to read them in a day or two because they just move so well. And you always have shocking stuff
I
uh,
try.
somewhere. And that's part of the arc of if you have a lengthy story, you need some arcs in it, meaning you need some points where a person is reading it and says, wow, you need a bunch of those. The longer your book, the more of those you need. But
Absolutely.
otherwise it's just boring. It's just,
Mhm.
it's not enough action.
Mhm.
So you said this is about some teenagers.
Yeah, so it's told from the point of view of the parents, and there are some scenes from the teenage daughter's point of view. So it's really
Okay.
just taking the entire family and
Okay.
showing what's the impact of their daughter getting looped into this toxic friendship with a sociopathic teenager who sets her sights on all of them. It's not just the girl that she's raising hell with. It's everybody
Hmm.
comes under threat at some point in the story. So yeah, it's gotten really, really good reviews from readers. So I definitely
Okay.
encourage y'all to check it out.
Well, I will read it at some point. I don't know what
Okay.
the point is, but I have so many books
I hear
that I
you.
want
Yeah.
to read. Maybe Rhonda and I are going to New York for the Harlem Book Fair. On the plane ride, I should be able to get about
Okay.
half a book read
Yeah,
on
and
one
I'll
of
be
my.
on the train.
There
So
you go.
I'm driving. I'm going to be in Philadelphia this Saturday. I'm going to drive to Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's
But
close.
yeah, that's only a couple hours. I am not. I've driven once from here to New York, and well, I'll take that back. When I was living in Maryland before, long time ago, I drove to New York one or two times, and I absolutely hated it. The very first time, I called my publicist and said, "I'm going back home." She said, "No, don't go back home. Just go." I'm like, "I'm about to miss this whole thing. I'm going home. I hate this drive." And and I must have forgotten about that lesson that I learned because I drove to New York again last a couple years ago. But no, I'm not driving to New York again. I'll be on the train
Okay.
reading a
Okay.
book with my feet up.
Okay. Well, I can't put my feet up on the plane, but I will be reading. So anyway,
Okay.
Brandon, thank you so much.
Thank
Congratulations
you.
on the release of your new book, your latest book.
Thank you very
And I'm
much.
sure you have some more that'll be coming out in another year or two.
I
So we'll
will.
be on the
Yeah.
lookout for whatever you got.
Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay,
You
you too.
too.
All right then.
Okay, so I had mentioned earlier that we have a book to give away. We talked about Tanana Reeve Do. This is her book of short stories, The Wishing Pool. And this book is out in paperback now. It was in hardcover. This is the advanced reading copy of the paperback. So here's the trivia question for this book if you want to win the book. This book is called The Wishing Pool and Other Stories. So, how many total stories are in the book? And the first person who answers it correctly gets their copy mailed to them this week. So, our final guest is Elaine Lee. She has a book and she's published the second edition of it. And it came out years ago. It's a travel guide called Go Girl. And she has done an update called Go Girl 2, the Black Woman's Book of Travel and Adventure. So she's going to tell us why she decided to do another edition of the book. When did the first book come out? Well, first of all, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. Thank you. And thank you for being flexible. We had to cancel that other show because of the power outage. So we just had everybody rebooked for for tonight. So thank you and you're joining us from California, correct?
San Francisco.
Oh, okay. So it's nice and daylight where you are.
Yes, and warm as it is.
It's nice and nighttime here.
Okay. Yeah, it is here. And she's on the East Coast. I'm in Texas, so it just got dark. You know, the days are getting shorter again.
I'm in the DC area, so it is 9:30 at night here.
Goodness. Yeah. But we got the country covered, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
We do coast to coast.
Yeah.
So first, what made you write the first edition of Go Girl?
Well, I tell you, when I was taking my very first trip around the world in '92, I had never met a Black woman who had accomplished such a feat. It was actually terrifying for me to not have a role model. And I was reluctant to actually take that trip. And after it was over and I had such a glorious time, 6 months on the road. And I thought, wow, I want other Black women to have this experience. And I don't want them to have the fear that I had, as well as all the difficulty I had in planning everything. So that inspired me. And there weren't any other travel books around. There hadn't been a travel book out since the Green Book back in the 60s that was created to help Black Americans navigate the United States in light of Jim Crow and American apartheid. So it's just a hard time, you know. There needs to be a travel book for Black folks. So that's what inspired me, and I loved my trip so much. I said I wanted to make travel a permanent part of my life, and I said, well, I love to travel. I love to write. I think I'll become a travel writer. That's what I did.
Now, when you created this book, did you choose the cities that you wanted in the book and then travel to those cities, or did you start with all the places where you'd been before and then put those into the book?
Well, actually, it's an anthology. So it's a compilation of Black women's travel stories, 54 different travel stories from Black women all over the world.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And so, and my voice and my travel stories are bracket the book. They're in the front and the back. And also, so I wanted to have stories on traveling to Africa, which is the first chapter. And the second chapter is traveling the diaspora, where the slaves were taken. And then lastly, other places in the world. I call it tripping around the world, like Indonesia, India, Italy. Yes. And then there's a planning guide and a resource guide. So that's kind of how I did it.
Oh, I should have been in the book. I've been in a few little places now.
You have, Rhonda. You've been more. I've only been to 2 continents. So that's North America and South America. So I mean, and I live in North America. So
let's see.
I plan to go next year. Okay, so
I've been to Africa. I've been to Europe. Asia. Where else have I been? Of course, North America.
Have you been to Australia?
I have not, but when I was stationed in Egypt years ago, I was on a multinational base. And so it felt like, you know, there were so many different countries represented on that base. And depending on the area of the base that you went to, you felt like you were in that country. So each country had their own bar, and they set the bars up like their country. So if you went to the
Oh.
French bar, then you were basically in a French atmosphere. You'll see the flags up. They had their French style drinks, they had their wines and all of that. And then let's say you decided you don't want to be in France anymore. You wanted to go to New Zealand. You can go to their area, and you learned a lot about their area. And then each country had their own national day where they would celebrate their culture. And that was my favorite thing. So that was when I got to see the New Zealand haka, and I got to see the Kiwi, I mean, excuse me, not the Kiwi, but the Fijian haka.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that was when I really got to spend time with Fijians. And I remember one man told me, he goes, "Why do you Americans think that I'm not black? I'm a black man too. Just because I'm from Fiji does not mean that I'm not a black man." And I was like, "You make a lot of sense." you know.
Mm.
And it was just good getting to know other cultures and just how they saw the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved my time in Egypt just because of the base I was on. I loved visiting Egypt and Israel while I was there, but just being on the base and experiencing all of those different cultures was just something that I'll never forget. So I'm blessed that I was able to spend that time there.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah. Now,
Like
what
the
made you
World's
go around
Fair.
the, yeah,
Mm.
what made you go around the world in 1992?
Well, initially I was going to go to Africa and for my second visit, and I was looking at the prices of the tickets, and then in this travel group I belonged to, someone said, "Well, why don't you check the prices for round the world airline tickets?" Which I did. I went to AirTrex, which that's what they specialize in is round the world airline tickets,
It's
and it was
amazing.
cheaper for me to go around the world than it was for me just to go directly to Africa. So I was like, well, I'll go around the world and I'll stop in Africa on the way.
I
How
never
do you do
realized,
that?
and it never even hit me. The
That's
thought never occurred
information.
to me that there are tickets that you can buy where you can go around the world. I guess are these travel agencies, or are there airlines that specialize in this? How do
Both.
you find something
Both.
like that?
Yeah, one isn't cheaper than the other. The one I use, AirTrek, is called the Bucket Shop. And somehow or another, they buy odd lots from all these different airlines because you basically end up flying basically standby. But you buy this around the world airline ticket. You have to complete it in a year. You have to go the
Okay.
same direction. And they usually give you like 8 different routes to pick from. So,
Wow.
and then I picked a route that I liked, and yeah, and then like United Airlines has a round the world ticket as well, but theirs are like $5,000, and AirTrack is like $2,000 to $2,500. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Wow. So
so
what
that
what
was the
about your
thing.
accommodations? How did you figure that out?
Well,
Where you
it
going to
varies.
stay?
Yeah, there I just in those in those days you had to carry travel books and
Okay.
you have to figure all this out as you went along. But now
Now you have,
I belong to a home exchange and a hospitality exchange club. So I oftentimes either swap homes with people or I'll accept their hospitality and stay in their homes, which makes things a lot cheaper and an opportunity to be immersed into a culture, which is a wonderful thing to do.
I had a
So,
friend who introduced me to hostels, because
mhm.
hostels in Europe are actually a lot nicer
Yes,
than the ones in the United States. So you could
yes,
stay in a hostel and spend a night there. It's super cheap, but they're not dangerous. They're not even, a lot of them aren't even dirty.
yeah.
They're just overnight places where you can spend the night and then go on your way. And I did it one time when I was stationed in Belgium. I
Mhm.
wanted to go to London to see Dreamgirls,
Okay.
and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a hotel, so I took the train from Belgium to London. And then I went and saw the play, and then I checked into the hostel, got a couple hours of sleep, and then the next morning I was up and back to the train station to go home. I'm
Oh,
like, I'm not
wow.
spending a lot of money on this.
No, of course not. Yeah, a lot of them are wonderful. I stayed in hostels in Greece and in Singapore, and they were
hmm,
absolutely actually beautiful. So
Yes.
And then
now
also
how would
now I do Airbnb, works out.
right? I was gonna say that's like a precursor to
Yeah,
Airbnb.
and then yes, and now also do couch surfing sometimes as well.
Oh,
Now
you
how
couch
do you
surfing. That's
is
brave.
Yes.
did she say house surfing or couch surf?
Couch
Couch.
surfing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, you can sleep on people's couches. There's all the network of people around the world who say you could come sleep on my couch if you're in the area. So you join the
wow.
group and you just post, I'm coming to your area. Can I sleep on your couch? And they'll say yes.
Well, you sound adventurous now. Why? And that's an understatement. Now, how are you able to take 6 months and like take a 6 month vacation, essentially?
Well, actually, I decided at age 40 that I wanted to take a trip around the world, and I went and saw a financial planner. And she and I crafted a plan on how to do my finances and how to do investments. And she said within 2 years, you should be able to retire, for a while and see the world. So that was how I did it. I'm a lawyer by profession, so that helped a little bit as well. And it's something I could always come back to, but I was able to dismantle my law practice and put my show on the road. But I had to make some sacrifices and a lot of planning. But actually, United States and Europe are what's really expensive. Once you get out of United States and Europe, everything is pretty cheap. I mean, I was living like a queen in Bali, Indonesia, on $10 a day. So,
You're right. You're
so
right.
yeah.
Well, as you're
Good
talking,
to
I
know.
remember a friend of mine when I was living in Belgium. I had a good friend in the United States who said that she was coming to my area. I was like, "Oh, that's great! I get to see you." She said, "Yeah, I took a year off, and it was some type of a program where they spend like 2 to 3 months in different countries. So
Okay.
she was going to spend, I think, 3 months in Brussels. So I was able to see her there. And then she would take another 3 months in another country. And they did that for an entire year.
Wow.
And she actually didn't take a year off from work. She was able to work it out to where she was working remote with her job. So
Mm-hmm.
she would log in at night for her job. And then she'd go sightseeing or whatever during the day. And, of course, get rest where she could. But she did that for, I think she wound up leaving the program early, but she did it for maybe I think maybe 6 months or something like that, and then she wound up going back home
Yeah.
because she just said it was a lot trying to log in at night because that was the way they made their money. They had to keep their jobs.
Yeah. Well, now
Yeah,
you got
but
all these digital nomads, a lot of people
yeah,
work,
yeah, yeah,
work
yeah.
remotely. So, it seems like Black women, folks in general, are just out there, claiming
Yeah.
their global citizenship and, enjoying life in other countries.
Yeah, that's
I
something
like
my
it.
daughter says she wants to be able to, she's trying to get her own business launched on the side. She
Mm-hmm.
says because she wants to be able to work from anywhere and travel.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you better do it before you have children, or you have to wait till they're grown. So
Yeah.
that's
Or
but
like some people I know, they just travel with their children. And it's so amazing how women help other women. They see a woman with a child, you'd be surprised how, in most cultures,
mhm.
your other women gravitate to women with children to help them. Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, what made you do the updated version, the Go Girl 2?
Many for several
And
reasons. One,
do you have a copy of the
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is, do you have a
okay.
copy of the books? Because I
yeah,
don't think we saw a
here's
copy.
here's what it looks like. Go
Yeah,
Girl,
okay.
Black
Okay.
Woman's Book of Travel and Adventure.
Okay.
Are
And
those your pictures or are those AI or
no, they're not. There's a couple AIs in here, but it's mainly the contributors to the book. Again, there's
wonderful?
54
Okay.
Black women who contributed to the book, so most of these are contributors. Yes.
I love
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I really am gonna. Yeah, I love the way the designer did it as well. And it was just high time. My first book came out 27 years ago, and it was like it's high time to have yet another
Wow.
one and to bring in the voices of a whole new generation of travel writers. I saved some of the great stories from the first book, and those are in here, as well as a whole plethora of new stories. And as well as now things are updated. I'm not talking about traveler's checks or guidebooks. I'm talking about, GPS and, ATMs and now the new way to travel the world. So it was just time. And then I also added a fourth chapter on travel philosophy, and it had and theories of different women like who started their own travel business, and women talking about their experience as being going to their first majority Black culture country. And so kind of like a psychological, sociological chapter as well, instead of just destinations. But it is the same format as Go Girl 1, chapter on traveling to Africa, chapter on the diaspora, and thirdly, a chapter on other places in the world, and a planning guide and a resource guide. So no excuse for people to not see the world. This is a ticket to ride.
Because I mean, you've made it easy for everybody to just get out there and do it.
You make it sound like it's and it is. It's all about what you want to do.
Yes,
figure out how to get it done.
Well, you have all of these women who told their stories. Do you include any tips on somebody who may want to venture out for the first time, but maybe they're a little nervous about doing it? Because right now, as much as I like to travel by myself, this is a scary world we live in now. And so people are getting a little bit more afraid to venture out by themselves now. So do you have tips for people like that?
Yes, and that's part of that new chapter that I added called The Genesis of the Traveling Spirit, and women talk about their approach to travel. And one woman wrote a whole travel story about her 10 years of traveling the world as a solo traveler. And she discusses all the aspects of traveling alone and the pros and cons of solo travel and group travel. So that's and then also for me as primarily a solo traveler, I just really encourage women to take the time to learn about the culture, dress appropriately, learn a little bit of the language, and I think it's a smart idea to have a contact in the country you're going to, so that always somebody you can stay in contact with and your people can stay in contact, so somebody knows where you are at all times. So if something happens, you'll have a
funny story. This is my last story. When Donald Trump was when he was elected president, and when was he in 2016? I was stationed in Belgium, and Ryanair, that's kind of the low budget airline out in Europe. They decided to have this big sale, and they were selling plane tickets super cheap. You can get tickets for like $16. That's how cheap they were. Yeah. So I purchased a round trip ticket to Bordeaux, Bordeaux, France. Loved it. I also purchased a ticket to Germany. To this, for some reason I'm having a brain fart, but a city in Germany. And there I decided not to get a hotel. So what I did was I flew out there and figured I would spend the entire day, and then I would take an early morning flight back home to go home, so I wouldn't get a hotel. So the first thing I did when I landed there is I went to Berlin. That's where I went. Because I had heard great things about the city. So as soon as I landed in Berlin, I went to see the Berlin Wall, and I ran into this Dutch couple, and we're laughing and talking, and I was trying to take pictures of myself by the wall, and then they offered to take pictures of me. I took pictures of them, and then we decided we wanted to go sightseeing. So I took a picture of all three of us, and I posted it to my Facebook page saying, I just met this really cool couple. And then I didn't post again for a few hours. So we went sightseeing, we looked at different things. And then a few hours later, I went and looked at my Facebook, and a friend of mine said, Rhonda, are you okay? I haven't heard from you since you posted that picture with those strangers. And, and it made me feel good that he was actually paying attention and wanted to make sure that I was okay. So I think that it's good when you do, even if you're traveling by yourself, posting pictures of yourself, letting people know where you are, because people are watching. People want to know that you're safe. And even if you don't think that they're paying attention, they're paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and then and I think that's so important. Another way to stay connected. But for me, I have kind of a vulnerable living situation, so I don't can't let people know when I'm traveling. So
Oh, no, that
I
makes
can't
sense.
post
Yeah,
anything
that
on
too.
Facebook.
So,
And I was doing a TV show for American Airlines, and I didn't read, as a lawyer, it's a shame. I didn't read the contract where it said I had to post while I was doing this TV show. And I said, I can't post that, and anyway, we finally worked it all out. But, sometimes it's not a good idea to let a lot of
people
people
know that you're not at home.
I specifically,
Right. See,
know.
it was safe for me to
Well,
be able to post
especially
that, but
if
you're absolutely right. I mean, because I also had friends who didn't post any of their vacation photos until they got back home,
Yes.
because you don't want to let people know that there's nobody at your house.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Right. Now, if
it
somebody's
is a
at
judgment call.
home, then it probably can work. If somebody's still at your
Yeah.
house
Mhm.
and you're just not there,
Yeah.
then that would be different.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed, I've seen several Facebook groups of Black women who travel.
Wow.
And they, a lot of them are women who normally would travel alone, but they formed a group of women who can travel alone with other people.
Yeah.
So, and my daughter, she went to Greece last year, and she flew, and then she went to Santorini, Mykonos, and I forgot the other city.
Oh, wow. I'm jealous of her.
Yeah. Well, next year we're going on a Mediterranean cruise, and we're going to Greece and Turkey and Italy on the cruise. But she has a Black travel agent that she uses, and the travel agent plans the whole trip. And each place she'll have like places for them to eat. They went horseback riding. So they have planned activities, and she does it as a package.
Yeah,
I don't know the name of the travel agent, but she really likes traveling that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you can afford a travel agent, yeah, why not let an expert do that for you? But if money is a challenge and you need to get free advice, you can just post it on Black Travel Movement, and like within 3 hours, any question you want answered will be answered. They've got over 400,000 members.
You've got a point there.
Okay, so it's called, what is it called?
Black Travel Movement on Facebook.
Oh, so it's a Facebook group or a page or whatever.
Facebook group.
Okay, Black Travel Movement. Well,
there's lots of Black Facebook groups out there, but that just happens to be the largest one. And when
that means they've been around a long time.
Yeah, and when I was on my way to Peru, and I didn't know anybody, didn't have any contacts, and I posted on there, and within a matter of days, I had my whole itinerary all just charted out for me. And one guy said, my goddaughter lives in El Carmen, which is a Black community just 3 hours south of Lima. Would you go visit my goddaughter and take her a gift for me? I mean, it just ended up being this fabulous trip, just through people giving me advice and tips from Facebook.
That's really good.
I didn't say when I was traveling. I just said I'm traveling.
Right. You didn't say when.
Yeah.
I think we planted the travel bug or seed in our daughter when we took her on cruises when she was a child. So by the time she was an adult, I think she had been on like 6 cruises. And so I said, whoever you meet, whatever man you meet, he needs to be able to take you on a cruise, or he needs to be cruise minded, because that's what she enjoys doing for travel. And I love it too. I love cruises. So last year we went to Alaska. She and I, which was that was the most beautiful cruise as far as scenery.
Something I've never done and want to do.
It's beautiful. It's untouched, nature. It's just beautiful. It's not developed, so you get to see beautiful lakes and the trees and the ice, and it's just gorgeous. And so I think traveling is great. People, even traveling within the United States, a lot of people don't travel within the U.S., and the United States has a huge, it's so different. Different places you go. We went on a road trip to California in 2021. And then next year we're going on a road trip to Montana and Wyoming. I haven't been. That's beautiful country.
It is.
I've seen the pictures. I want to see. see how it actually looks in real life.
Yeah.
So is there anywhere you want to go that you haven't been?
Well, part of my travel philosophy is I try to go to a new country every year, and also go to have a beach vacation because I'm a long distance fitness swimmer. And then also to go
Oh,
back to Paris, France, where I go every year as well, because I love it there so much. So my new country this year is going to be Portugal. I've never been to Portugal. And I'm
okay.
going to do something similar to what you did in terms of cruising. I'm going to be going on a river cruise, which I've never done before.
I've
It's
heard
actually
about
going to be a
those.
press trip that I'm going on because this bicycle adventure company has merged forces with a river cruise company, and they're going to be putting our bicycles on the cruise ship, and then we're going to be going down the Douro River in Portugal and stopping different places along the way and biking into little towns and villages and seeing natural wonders and things like that. So I'm really excited about that adventure, as well as ultimately ending up in Lisbon, which I've never been. And I understand there's a huge Black American community there. I'm looking forward to meeting them and learning more about their world. So that's a tentative plan for something new that I haven't tried.
Well, I probably won't ever catch up with what you do with travel. But I want to do more of it, and I'm going somewhere every year, and
Yes.
preferably at least a cruise every year too, in addition to somewhere else, because I love cruising. To me, it's the best vacation.
Yeah.
So one of our viewers said that this has been good information. She said, I have a friend who loves to travel and she'll purchase your book and pass it on. That was Anquinette Wyndham. She watches um, the show regularly. So
Mm-hmm.
she's going to pass on your book. I think this
Yeah.
is fascinating.
Yeah. So you can
I
find it on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Okay, you can
Mm-hmm.
find the book on Amazon. And I heard about your book being released through a press release. I don't remember. I think it might have been posted on the Griot or Essence or Black News or one of those in
Mm-hmm.
March when it first came out. So I had to find you.
Oh,
I had to find your email. It took me
oh,
a
okay.
while to find you. So,
I'm so glad you
but
did.
that's how we became aware. So when you were releasing the book, whatever press you put out about it,
Mm-hmm.
it did
Made its
circulate.
way to you.
Yeah, it
Good.
did circulate.
Mm-hmm.
So has there been a country that you've been to that you really would not want to go back to?
That I would not want to go back to. Right now, that's a hard
That
one.
that
So
you're
hard to
willing to
say.
say?
Hard to say because you're on your way to Greece, but Greece just did not work out for me. And
Really?
you're not going to have this experience because you're going a different way. You're going on a cruise ship. I went by myself, and I had my hair in braids, and they thought I was African, and they don't really like African people there because Africa's really
Mm.
close to that part
Yeah,
of
I think
Europe.
she said Egypt was close to where she was, I
Yeah,
think. Or
so
Turkey.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
really gave me a rough time of it.
Oh,
So I probably wouldn't go back unless it was a free press trip, then perhaps. But it just soured my taste for that place. I had planned to go for 3 weeks, and after 5 days, I said no, no more. After so many people just harassed me, so
oh,
I ended up
wow.
just going to Egypt for a whole
Okay,
month
yeah, she
instead.
said Egypt was close.
Yeah.
And she also told me about Greece, and I don't know if it was one of the cities or the whole country, because we're a cat family, and my daughter loves cats, like
Mm,
really adores
Mm.
cats. And she said cats just kind of roam free in Greece,
yes, they
where she
do. You
was.
see them everywhere.
You see
Yes,
them everywhere. She was loving it.
I know. Yeah.
So, well,
Yeah,
anyway,
you'll see cats in restaurants. They're sitting on the tables.
yeah, and we don't let our kids.
I
we,
hope
don't-
not.
we make sure he is on the floor where he belongs, and if not, he gets sprayed with water. So anyway, Elaine, we're at the end of our show, but show your book cover one more time.
Okay, go girl. The
Oh,
Black
Girl
Woman's Book of
Too
the
is
Girl.
a Black
Yeah,
woman's book of travel and adventure. And
yeah,
it's been fascinating just to hear about all your world travels.
yeah. Thank you for
Kudos.
this
And don't
opportunity
think
to
I
share.
didn't hear you slip in that you're a long distance swimmer.
Yes, I am. Been
That's
swimming
hot. I
a
like that.
Yeah,
mile
yeah.
3 times a week for the last probably 40 years.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great exercise, and one reason I'm perfectly healthy, thank goodness. I'm sure
Yeah,
it
I've
has
heard
something
it
to do
is.
with it. You got to invest that time in your body, or it'll take the time. You can give it the
You
time, or
do.
it'll take the time.
You do. You do. Well, thanks again,
Thank
and
you.
happy trails and
Yes,
travel.
thank you. Thank you. All right, blessed be
All
your
right.
journey. All the best.
Good
Thank you for
night.
Good
having me
night.
on the show.
Okay, well, we're at the end of our show. The book, The Wishing Pool, I believe was won by Lydia Brew, Rhonda, unless you saw something different.
No,
So
I
Lydia,
believe that is what I saw as
okay,
well, because I'm not about to have Lydia mad at me.
okay. So the answer was 14. There are 14 stories in this book.
Yes.
So that's all for this week. And next week, on next week's show, we'll be announcing the finalists for the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards in the second half of the show. But until then, we will see you next week. And I'm Gwen Richardson signing off. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.